First of all, I want to start. Listen, Steve Rogers is out of the picture right now, so I'm curious. With both of your characters not competing for Steve's love, what does this mean for the relationship with Bucky and Sam? Can they be friends now?
No one can be Bucky's friend because he kills everyone he meets.
Why can't we be friends?
There we go. Sing it. I do love how the show gets to know these characters on a really personal level, and with families and friends and going on dates and everything. You name it, stuff we haven't seen before in the MCU. Sam's family got hit hard by the blip and everything. Anthony, where are Sam's priorities in this post-Endgame era of the MCU?
Well, just reconnecting. I mean, he's in a position now where he's trying to figure out where he fits in. You know, what's his new normal. So that's kind of the understanding that he's going into the series with is, you know, going back to his family, going back to his house and figuring out how to move forward.
I mean, you do a great job with the family stuff too, and those performances. I love that. Sebastian, I'm not going to lie. I've held a bit of a grudge when I found out Bucky killed the Starks. So I just got to be honest about that. But this show, it really dives into the mental health that Bucky has and the guilt that he's been carrying. And I admit it's changing my perspective a good bit, man. So I'd love to hear from you what it was like to dive into everything that Bucky has been carrying with him in the way this show does.
Well, obviously, I was excited about that because I think we talked a lot about it, you know, in some of the other movies, and there was never enough time to sort of explore him after Civil War and where he was at and how, you know, how much he had confronted, how much there was still left for him to deal with. And so this is really the perfect time, you know, for both of these characters to be learning more about, you know, themselves, the world they're in, and their priorities. And he's right up there, you know, with Sam on that.
Yeah. Who gets there's some cool action in the first episode for both of you. They're both separate. When you come together, who gets the cooler action moment between the two? Did you guys compete for who gets to flex the hardest?
Sebastian has some pretty cool sequences. After watching the series, I was kind of jealous.
Really?
I was kind of jealous.
Who really mastered throwing the shield? Because I see in the trailer, both of you guys get to hold the shield at some point. Was there a trick that one of you guys had to really nail down?
Well, the question is if there is an actual shield there to begin with.
Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, you know. It's like it's actually you have to look a lot cooler than you think you do on throwing that thing. That's for sure.
Yeah. Do you guys have any idea where after this show, like has there been a conversation about playing these characters again yet?
No, we haven't. At least I have. I mean, you never know what's going on and who's been called and what they've been told, but there hasn't been any conversation on my end. I think everyone, Marvel, Disney, us included, just wants to see how this show is going to land. I think everyone's going to have a new perspective on our characters and a new appreciation for our characters once these shows come out, and that'll help us figure out how we move forward.
Dude, let's talk about Falcon and Winter Soldier. You wrote this thing. I saw the first episode. It's a blast, man. The action is dope. The character development is really impressive. And I want to start at the comics. I'm curious. Was there any specific comic runs or anything that you looked at, like whether it was Brubaker, Spencer, the more recent Landy stuff, or is this kind of an amalgamation of a lot of different stories?
It always is an amalgamation. Like, you know, we had a bunch of the Truth books. I think that was the series we had on the table. And it becomes what ends up happening inevitably is you start to diverge from the comic book universe the second you get into character and what it takes for a character to be emotional and go through this journey. And then you just got to let it be what it be and be a ride. But it's all there. And you work side by side with Marvel and with Marvel execs who are steeped in both the comic book world and the MCU so that they're able to feed you either one. Like any reference point I don't have, they got at their fingertips at every moment.
Yeah, Feige and all them know they have the deepest knowledge of all this stuff. It's crazy. What I like most about the Falcon and Winter Soldier from what I've seen so far is, like I said to you, the character development. Sam Wilson, man, we see him go back and be with his family and life outside of the Avengers. So I want to hear from you. What did you most enjoy getting a chance to tap into? The MCU hasn't done anything like this before with this character. Let's see these sides of Sam.
It's funny. We were first up, and it was a process like to adapt. Kevin and Nate Moore, the executive, who work with me, and Zoe, they've only made movies and TV storytelling or serialized storytelling. Forget TV, because this isn't, definitely, you've seen it. It's not a TV show, right? It has a very different rhythm to it that allows for those deep dives. And we had to get comfortable with each other. And they embraced the idea that these characters now have a personal storyline, not just story beats, but storyline, that the only way it connects to the A story is in how it affects the characters. And doing that deep dive, that I feel like that's part of why they embrace me. And and it's what they wanted for this thing. And, I'm hoping it feels like fans are really, really digging the pacing, because it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. It never abandons the fun, but all these threads are very much going somewhere, very emotional, very real.
Yeah, and after seeing WandaVision, to realize that Marvel can do this and take these deep dives and these characters thanks to this format, I can't wait to see what y'all are cooking up. And I mean, I want to dive into Bucky on that similar front. I loved how the mental health and like the guilt that he's carrying is front and center. I mean, how did you focus in on showcasing what Bucky's going through?
He was teed up really nicely for us, because the audience, he's flirted with, like, you saw what he did to Stark's family. You've seen him be a villain, and you have a sense of how many people this man must have killed. And then we had this line in the series where he basically says, I remember every one of them, which means I was there. Whether I was being manipulated by Hydra or not, a part of me was there. And am I a monster? And if I'm not a monster, how do I prove that? And so his personal storyline is just to prove to himself that he's not a monster. And, all that baggage he showed up with and the abilities Sebastian has as an actor, it turned into a dream situation.
It comes off so well. Is there more flashbacks coming? Can you say anything about that? Because I loved the flashback we saw.
I cannot say anything about that, but all of that stuff is done with purpose and to load up the emotional journey for the character.
Yeah. It's a nice pairing and like contrast at the same time. It's also interesting too. These are characters we haven't seen in like social settings, and Bucky in this first episode is kind of set up for a date. You know what I mean? And that's a big thing that a lot of the Stan Twitter people are going to have reactions to. I mean, how do you go about kind of, I don't know where that relationship goes, if anywhere, or just it's part of the first episode or not. How do you go about kind of deciding, we can bring in these other characters and make them part of these characters' lives and things like that?
That was the agenda from the beginning. Like, it was like I left out an important thing about Bucky. Yes, he's dealing with the fact that he wants to know whether or not he's a monster, right? And prove he's not. He's also 106 years old. His brain was never present in any era. So he is not a man of any era. And so we realized that you can have fun creating a scene like the one you're talking about, right? And at the same time, there's a profound layer. Think about what the old man says right before he goes on that date. There's a profound layer to it of this dude who's just completely out of place in every moment he's in.
Yeah, when he says I'm 106, I was like, that's quite a reality check. In the moment, you're like, oh yeah, this man is old, and he's not acclimated to our world. I do love, just an MCU fan, I love seeing how the loss of Steve plays such a big role. And I mean, even when we just see Rhodey in the first episode, when the camera cuts to him, you're like, oh yeah, he was, such good friends with Tony. How the loss of these core characters from Endgame, how much of a presence does that kind of loom over the story here?
Well, the loss of Steve is the big one because it hits on multiple levels, right? You have a planet that is now completely spun out post-snap, post-blip, right? And that's the kind of problem when the entire world is dealing with one problem. That's the kind of thing only a hero like Steve is qualified for, right? And we distilled that down to, you have Sam and Bucky, who people really wrote a lot more into their heads than actually happened as far as how deep their relationship is. And they're starting to discover through their relationship, the loss of Steve is very, very active because they're just two dudes who had a mutual best friend in common.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not they like each other is tethered to the fact that a very important person is gone. So that connectivity from the bigger plot level and world level is sort of dramatized into character relationship.
You know, I'm really looking forward to seeing Zemo in this show, and we know he's going to get a fully realized kind of comics accurate purple mask and stuff like that. And I love how when that kind of moment happens in the MCU, they always kind of justify it. They explain how it fits organically. Can you tease it all how you kind of dove into like an evolution for Zemo since we last saw him in Civil War?
It's all front and center. And it's funny because as we did different iterations of this, all the stuff you're talking about, who Zemo is, what he did in his past for his country, where that mask came from, all just became tangled into one personal storyline of a man whose country, city, and family were destroyed by superheroes who he views as villains, right? And so Zemo believes he's a hero in this series. You know what I'm saying? And all of that is tethered to something very, very personal for him. And I got to say, man, Daniel Bruhl, like, Sebastian and Anthony can take everything out the park, but Daniel Bruhl was like, I'm going to steal every scene I'm in if I can. He was great.
Oh, dude, I can't wait to see it. Which episode are you most excited for everybody to see?
Hands down, 5. It just gets real in 5. You're going to cry. You know what I'm saying?